George Washington. The name alone is enough to conjure up images of brave patriots standing up to tyranny and oppression, hard-won victories against superior opponents, and building a nation out of scattered colonies and untamed wilderness. He was the hero of the Revolutionary War, the father of America, and if you're into Warhammer 40k, one of the early incarnations of the Emperor of Mankind. Praise be to the Emperor. The point, though, is that Washington's life and accomplishments have been glorified and magnified and deified by so many generations of historians, storytellers, and propagandists that it's become kinda hard to separate fact from fiction, and all too easy to lose sight of the flawed and human man behind all the bluster and patriotism. That is where young Washington comes into the picture, shedding light on an earlier chapter of Washington's life when he was nothing but a lowly farmer desperate to make something of himself, still fighting for the British instead of against them, and a very long way from the formidable general he'd one day become. And since it's the 4th of July weekend, everyone in America's busy celebrating the birth of their country by getting drunk and blowing up small parts of it, and the movie's managed to beat Supergirl at the box office. I figured I might as well take a look myself. The movie kicks off in 1750s colonial America, where the British and French are racing to grab as much of the New World as possible, and between them, the Native Americans, who for obvious reasons aren't particularly keen on either side. Into the mix steps a 20-year-old George Washington, an obscure farmer from Virginia who aspires to bigger and better things and tries to join the British Army as an officer, only to get turned down because he's not rich or upper class or, well, British. Eventually though, he blags his way into a high society party and charms the host into letting him survey the newly claimed lands of Ohio. But tensions rise when he discovers the French army have decided that it belongs to them instead and are building fortifications there. Clearly this shall not be allowed to stand, sir. After reporting back to the governor, he's sent there to deliver an ultimatum: fuck off or face the consequences. Now, everyone expects the French to do what they do best, surrender, but they're like, nah, it'll be fine. Or should I say, no, sera. So naturally there's a bit of a set to, and a bunch of Frenchmen get killed in the fighting, but then they come back with a much bigger army, totally kick Washington's arse, and force him to sign a humiliating surrender that blames everything on him. Demoralised by the disaster, he resigns from the army and goes back to farming, only to discover that maybe, just maybe, he's not done yet. And when he learns that the Brits are mounting a major offensive to take the fortress and give those Frenchies a bloody good hiding, he decides to throw his hat in the ring and take one last shot at glory. Now, historical epics are hardly a new invention, but they do seem to be having a bit of a resurgence these days. Napoleon was, well, definitely a movie of all time.
You think you're so great because you have boats! 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 Boats!
And as for the Odyssey, well, that remains to be seen, but as far as young Washington goes, it actually kinda surprised me. I was expecting some jingoistic, overblown celebration of the man's legacy, as flattering and saccharine as it was inaccurate, but it's actually a pretty fair portrayal of him as a heroic but flawed man, desperate to prove himself, ambitious and resourceful, but also naive and inexperienced, all too capable of making mistakes and letting pride and ego get the better of him. The deciding factor, though, is his ability to learn from his mistakes and move past them to bigger and better things. He's a man always striving to better himself, whether it's in education, social standing, or the art of war, and I like how the movie's pretty honest about his motivations here. He's not out to build nations and better the cause of humanity, he's just a brash young man seeking fortune and glory for its own sake, and chafing under the suffocating restrictions of the British class system. He's reasonably well portrayed by William Franklin Miller, who's got the kind of chiseled good looks that have got nothing to do with the real-life Washington, who wasn't considered especially handsome, but they're ideal for a Hollywood epic where the audience needs to be won over quickly, and he's mostly able to hold his own against experienced players like Ben Kingsley, Kelsey Grammer, and Andy Serkis. On the production side of things, I've got no real issues here. For a movie that clearly wasn't made on a huge budget, the overall look and feel is better than it has any right to be. The period settlements and costumes are convincing enough to let you buy into it, and the battle and action sequences are well staged, even if they're disappointingly bloodless. Going for that family-friendly rating, clearly. You can tell they saved most of their resources for the big climactic battle at the end, which was definitely the right move. In terms of historical accuracy, the movie broadly follows real events, but condenses and simplifies some of the more tedious stuff for the sake of narrative expediency and drama. In real life, Washington was extremely pro-British and arrogant to the point of self-sabotage at that point in his life. He threw a major hissy fit and resigned his commission in the Virginia militia when he found out it was being converted into a regular army unit and he was going to get demoted from colonel to captain. He had no particular issues with the British class system and actually spent years trying to rise through the ranks, and he definitely wasn't some working class down on his luck farmer who had to blag his way into high society events. He was a wealthy and successful landowner even as a young man, the kind of guy who absolutely would have been on the invite list. Oh yeah, and some of the dialogue is pretty anachronistic too. At one point Washington says, "yeah," and tells a wounded man he's gonna be okay. Two words that wouldn't even be invented for another 100 years or so. Ultimately, young Washington falls more into the Braveheart school of historical epics, sacrificing realism for the sake of drama and excitement rather than the meticulous reconstruction of something like Lincoln, a rousing, patriotic movie that contains just enough truth to shed light on a time in the man's life that often gets overlooked, without getting too bogged down in the tedium and complexity of real life. Releasing it on the 4th of July weekend was an obvious choice to take advantage of all that pro-America sentiment, and to be fair, it worked. The film's killing it at the box office, and apparently a trilogy is planned that'll chart Washington's life through the Revolution and on to the presidency. And you know what? I might just watch it. Since it's basically illegal to take any kind of pride in your country over on this side of the pond, it's nice to live vicariously through people who still know how to do the whole patriotism thing. Young Washington might not be a perfect movie, but it'll definitely keep you engaged for a couple of hours, and it might just teach you a thing or two along the way. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.